Space was quiet in a way that most people could never understand. It was not just the absence of sound. It was a deep, endless stillness that pressed against the mind. Stars burned far away, cold and silent, like distant memories that no one could touch. Elias Ward had lived in that silence for many years. His small salvage ship moved slowly along the edge of an uncharted system, engines humming softly like a tired animal that refused to stop working. The ship was old, scratched by dust and time, but it was strong. Elias trusted it more than he trusted most living beings. Inside the cockpit, dim yellow lights glowed over simple human controls. Wires showed in places where panels had been repaired too many times. Tools floated gently near the ceiling in low gravity, turning slowly in the air. Elias sat in the pilot's chair with one boot hooked under a metal bar to keep himself steady. He had not shaved in days, and dark circles rested under his eyes, but his hands were calm and careful as he adjusted a damaged power relay beside him. He worked quietly, humming a slow, uneven tune that he barely noticed anymore. Machines made sense to him. Broken things could be fixed. People were harder. A soft warning sound suddenly interrupted the silence. Elias did not react at first. Warnings happened often in an old ship. Most of them were small problems that could wait. But then the scanner light changed from yellow to deep red. His humming stopped. He looked up slowly at the screen in front of him. For a few seconds he said nothing. Then he leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "That's not possible," he murmured to himself. Far across the darkness of space, something enormous drifted near the edge of a dying star's gravity pull. Even from this distance, the object was massive, far larger than any cargo ship or civilian vessel. The computer struggled to understand what it was. Symbols flickered across the screen, searching old databases. Finally, a result appeared. Royal-class war vessel. Unknown alien origin. Critical damage detected. Emergency beacon active. Elias stared at the words in silence. Royal ships meant governments. Governments meant rules. Rules usually meant trouble. He slowly leaned back in his chair and rubbed his face with one rough hand. "Not my problem," he said quietly. His ship's engine turned slightly, ready to continue on its original path through empty space. He could leave. No one would know he had ever been here. For a long moment he watched the drifting alien vessel on the screen. The emergency beacon kept flashing. Slow. Weak. But still asking for help. Elias closed his eyes and let out a long breath. "Yeah," he whispered. "I know." He reached forward and changed the ship's course. The small salvage tug began moving toward the dying giant in the dark. Up close, the alien ship looked nothing like human engineering. It was beautiful in a strange and unsettling way. Instead of hard metal angles, its surface curved like living bone mixed with crystal. Pale silver light moved slowly beneath the outer shell, like blood flowing under skin. Parts of the hull were cracked open, leaking faint glowing gas that drifted into space like silent smoke. Elias guided his tiny ship toward a damaged docking ring that looked only half functional. "Easy, easy," he muttered, fingers dancing over manual controls. Magnetic clamps connected with a heavy thunk that vibrated through his hull. Warning lights flickered, but the connection held. For a moment, everything became still again. Elias put on a simple breathing mask, grabbed a worn tool bag, and floated toward the airlock. Before opening it, he paused. "Fix the ship," he told himself softly. "No talking. No politics. Just fix and leave." He nodded once, like a man making a promise he was not sure he could keep. Then he opened the door. Cold, silver light filled the corridor beyond. The inside of the alien vessel felt alive. The walls were smooth and slightly warm, glowing faintly with soft white patterns that moved like slow heartbeats. Thin lines of blue light traveled through the floor beneath his boots, carrying energy somewhere deep inside the ship. The air smelled clean, almost sweet, with a strange metallic taste that lingered in his mouth. Elias stepped forward carefully, eyes moving in every direction. "Okay," he whispered. That's new. He had repaired hundreds of ships in his life. None had ever felt like this. He did not walk far before he realized he was not alone. Tall figures waited at the end of the corridor. They were thin, graceful, and completely still. Their skin looked pale like moonlight, and faint light shone inside their eyes. Smooth armor covered their bodies, shining like polished glass. None of them held visible weapons. But Elias had lived long enough to know that meant nothing. He slowly raised one empty hand. "Hi," he said in simple, careful words. "Your ship is broken." "I fix broken ships." The figures did not move. For a second, he wondered if they even understood sound. Then, a new presence stepped forward between them. She was taller than the others. Light curved above her head in gentle crystal shapes, glowing softly like a crown made of stars. Her expression was calm, but her eyes held something deep and ancient that Elias could not explain. When she spoke, no sound entered the air. Instead, her voice appeared directly inside his mind, clear, gentle, and powerful. "You answered a call that many ignored. Human. You have our gratitude." Elias blinked once, surprised but not afraid. He had seen stranger things. "Yeah," he said slowly. "Well..." Distress beacons pretty clear, hard to ignore. A quiet feeling passed through the group behind her. Not exactly emotion, more like shared thought. The tall woman studied him with careful curiosity. "You came without payment?" Elias scratched the back of his neck. "Didn't ask yet. Figured I should fix the dying ship part first." Silence followed. Real silence this time. Something about his answer seemed to confuse them deeply. Finally, the glowing woman spoke again. "You may begin repairs. All paths will open for you." Elias gave a small nod. "Good. Because from the outside, your reactor looks really bad. The damage inside the ship was worse than he expected. Energy systems were burned out in patterns that did not look accidental. Control pathways had been cut with careful precision. Even the living power core at the center of the vessel showed signs of poison. Dark crystals spreading slowly through bright structures. Someone had not just attacked the ship, someone had tried to make sure it never lived again. Elias worked without stopping. Hours passed, then more hours. G and I, V, U, I. He used human tools on alien machines, sometimes guessing, sometimes trusting. Pure instinct built from years of impossible repairs. Sweat floated from his forehead in small silver drops. His hands shook from exhaustion, but he did not stop. Slowly, the ship began to respond. Lights grew stronger. Energy flowed smoother. Broken systems started to breathe again. Life returned piece by piece. Far away in a quiet chamber, the crowned alien queen watched everything through living walls that showed her the ship's senses. She had ruled for centuries. She had seen wars, betrayals, and empires fall, but she had never seen someone give so much effort without asking anything in return. For the first time in many years, she felt something close to uncertainty. When Elias finally finished, he could barely stand. He wiped grease across his sleeve and looked at the glowing systems around him with tired satisfaction. "Yeah," he whispered. "You'll live." Soft footsteps approached behind him. He turned and saw the queen standing alone. Her light was calmer now, warmer. "Name your reward," Elias Ward. He shook his head gently. Don't need one. Confusion touched her thoughts. Explain. He looked around the restored chamber. Ship's not dying anymore. That's enough. She had no answer ready. Nothing in her long life had prepared her for a mind like this. Elias gave a small, tired smile and turned toward the docking corridor. Well, I should get going before something else breaks. He walked away slowly. The corridor doors opened for him. Then, just as he stepped through, they slammed shut behind him with a deep, final sound. Elias stopped. He looked back at the sealed metal, then forward again. Okay, he said quietly. That's not normal. The Queen's voice entered his mind once more. Soft, careful. You cannot leave. Elias frowned slightly. Pretty sure I can. I just need the door open. A long pause filled the ship. Then she spoke the words that would change everything. By the oldest law of my people, a life freely given belongs to the crown. Silence spread through the glowing corridor. Elias stood very still. You locked me in, he said slowly. Because I helped you? The Queen stepped closer, her light shining brighter than before. No, human. Another pause. A deeper truth forming. I locked you in because now you are too valuable to lose. Far outside the wounded ship, invisible to Elias, dark shapes were already moving through space. Warships, hundreds of them, coming fast, and the silence of the stars was about to end. Space outside the great living ship did not stay quiet for long. Dark shapes moved through the distant stars, slow at first, almost invisible against the endless black. Then more shapes appeared behind them, and more after that, until the empty space no longer looked empty. Cold metal hulls reflected faint starlight. Engines burned with a dull purple glow that felt wrong even from far away. They were not explorers. They were not traders. They were hunters who had come to finish a job. Inside the alien dreadship, most of the crew did not yet know how close danger had come. Soft silver lights still moved along the walls. Repair systems still hummed gently where Elias had worked. Life had returned, but peace had not. Elias Ward stood in the sealed corridor, staring at the closed door that had locked him away from his own small ship. He did not shout. He did not hit the wall. Years of hard living had taught him that panic never fixed anything. So he simply turned around and looked at the tall, glowing Queen behind him. She watched him with careful attention, as if every small movement he made mattered. That law of yours, Elias said in calm, simple words. Does it always start with kidnapping? The being standing farther down the corridor shifted slightly, uneasy with his tone. No one spoke to their queen this way. Not with humor. Not without fear. But the queen did not show anger. Our oldest law protects balance, she answered softly inside his mind. A life given freely cannot be allowed to fade into danger. It must be guarded. Elias crossed his arms slowly. Guarded? Or owned? The question hung in the glowing air. For the first time since he arrived, the Queen did not answer immediately. She had ruled for centuries. She had judged wars and peace between entire star systems. Words had always come easily to her. But this human used small, simple questions that felt heavier than long speeches. Not owned, she said at last. Protected. Elias let out a quiet breath through his nose.
Still feels like the door is locked.
Before she could reply, a sharp tone cut through the corridor. It was not loud, but it carried urgency. Lines of red light suddenly appeared along the silver walls, moving fast like flowing blood. The crew members down the hall turned at once, their calm expressions breaking for the first time. Danger had arrived. The Queen's eyes brightened with sudden focus. Information poured into her mind from every sensor across the ship. Distances, numbers, weapons, speed. What she saw brought a cold weight even to an ancient ruler. "They have found us," she whispered. Elias lifted an eyebrow. "Let me guess. Friends?" "No," she answered. "The ones who tried to kill us before." He nodded once, not surprised. "Yeah." Figured. The red lights deepened across the corridor as the ship's voice, soft and almost alive, spread a silent warning through every chamber. Crew members moved quickly now, long robes and shining armor flowing behind them. Calm had changed into controlled fear. Elias watched it all with quiet attention. "How bad?" he asked. The Queen did not hide the truth. "Too many," she said. "Even repaired, this vessel cannot stand alone." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The distant vibration of engines preparing for battle traveled through the living floor beneath their feet. Elias finally rubbed his tired face with one hand. "Okay," he murmured. "So the people who broke your ship are back to finish the job?" "Yes. And I'm locked inside," he added. "Yes." He nodded slowly again.
Great timing. Despite everything, a strange feeling touched the Queen's thoughts. It felt almost like
amusement. Not because the situation was light, but because the human refused to let fear control his voice. Many warriors shouted before battle. Many rulers gave long speeches. This one simply spoke the truth in the smallest number of words. She studied him carefully. "You are not afraid?" she said. Elias shrugged a little. "Being afraid doesn't make enemy ships disappear?" "No," she agreed softly. "It does not." More alarms pulsed through the ship. Far away, massive defense systems began to wake from long sleep. Energy gathered like distant thunder. Elias glanced toward the sealed door once more. "Look," he said, still calm. "I didn't come here to get involved in a royal space war. I just fix engines." "You already are involved," the Queen replied gently, "because you chose to help." He opened his mouth to answer, then stopped. Arguing with that kind of truth felt pointless. Instead, he asked a different question. "What happens if they win?" Silence followed. Not the peaceful silence of space. A heavy silence filled with things no one wanted to say. "At best," the Queen said slowly, "my people become servants. And at worst, we do not survive." Elias looked down at the glowing floor for a few seconds. His expression did not change much, but something quiet moved behind his eyes. He had seen places that no longer existed. He had seen ships drifting with no one left alive inside. The universe could be very cold when no one stood up to stop it. He lifted his head again. "So?" he said simply. "What's the plan?" The Queen seemed almost surprised by the question. "You would still help us even now?" He gave a small, tired half-smile. "Lady, you locked me in the middle of this. Might as well make sure I survive, too." A faint ripple of emotion passed through her mind, something warmer than before. Before she could answer, a new voice spoke through the corridor. One of her commanders approached quickly, light flashing across his armor. "Your Radiance," he said with controlled urgency. "Enemy fleet entering outer range. Attack pattern confirmed." She turned toward him, ancient authority returning to every movement. "Prepare full defense," she ordered. "All surviving ships to formation." The commander hesitated only a fraction of a second. "Our numbers are insufficient." "I am aware," she said quietly. He bowed and hurried away. Elias watched the exchange, then looked back at her.
Mind if I see your control room? He asked.
She studied him again, searching for hidden motive. She found none. Only focus. Only stubborn determination. Come, she said. The sealed door behind him finally opened, not to let him leave, but to bring him deeper inside the heart of the warship. He followed her through long, glowing corridors that curved like the inside of a living creature. Crew members stopped and stared as the human passed. Some showed fear, some curiosity. None understood why their queen walked beside him as an equal. They reached a vast circular chamber filled with floating lights and moving shapes made of pure energy. This was the command center, the mind of the ship itself. In the center hung a wide image of space. Dark enemy vessels covered the stars like a spreading shadow. Elias whistled softly.
Yeah, he said. That's a lot.
The queen watched his face carefully. Many beings froze when they saw such numbers. Many lost hope before battle even began. Elias only leaned closer to the glowing display, eyes moving fast as he studied distances and movement. After a long moment, he spoke.
You can't win straight, he said. Not like this. We know, she answered.
He nodded. Good. Means we don't waste time pretending. One of the nearby officers looked shocked at his tone, but the queen lifted a hand slightly, allowing him to continue. Elias pointed toward a faint pulsing structure deep inside the ship's energy map. That healing core I fixed, he said. How much power can it push if we stop using it for healing? The officers exchanged confused looks. It is not a weapon, one said carefully. I know, Elias replied, but power is power.
You can send it somewhere else?
The queen's eyes brightened with sudden thought. You wish to create a signal? He gave a small smile. Exactly. To call reinforcements? She asked. Yeah. A quiet sadness touched her voice. No allies are near enough to arrive in time. Elias leaned back slightly. Didn't say I was calling your allies. She looked at him, truly uncertain now. Then whose? He met her glowing eyes with calm human stubbornness. Mine. The chamber grew very still. Your species is far from this region, she said slowly. Not that far, he answered. You believe they would come into certain danger? Elias thought of old friends, old debts, voices laughing across broken radios. He gave the simplest answer he had. They'll come, he said. Not all of them, but enough. Silence held the room for several long seconds. Then the queen made her decision. Do it, she ordered softly. Energy began to move through the great ship, changing direction, gathering toward the healing core Elias had repaired with tired human hands. Systems designed to restore life prepared instead to send a message across the dark between stars. Elias watched the power rise. Let's hope, he murmured. Someone's listening. Far outside, the enemy fleet continued to advance, cold and certain of victory. Inside, a single human signal prepared to cross impossible distance. A thin beam of light suddenly shot from the dread ship's heart into the endless black, carrying one simple call across the universe. Not a command, not a threat, just a quiet request for help. Then they waited, and in the deep silence beyond sight, something answered. The signal left the wounded alien dread ship as a thin line of light, almost too small to matter in the endless dark. It did not look powerful. It did not carry threats or proud words. It was only a quiet call, moving faster than thought, crossing cold distance where no sound could live. Inside the command chamber, no one spoke after the signal was sent. Waiting was harder than fighting. The queen stood still at the center of the glowing room, her tall form calm on the outside, but deep currents of worry moved through her ancient mind. Around her, officers watched the star map as enemy ships continued to move closer, in perfect, merciless formation. Elias Ward leaned against a smooth silver console with tired shoulders and folded arms. He looked far less important than anyone else in the chamber. His clothes were worn, grease still marked one sleeve. His boots were scratched from years of walking inside broken ships. Nothing about him looked like hope, but the signal had been his idea, so everyone waited with him. Time passed slowly, too slowly. One officer finally spoke in a careful voice. No response detected. Another minute passed, then another. Enemy ships crossed a new invisible line on the map, entering weapon range soon. Soft warning tones began to echo through the chamber, like distant heartbeats growing faster. The Queen turned her glowing eyes toward Elias. "You are certain they understood the call?" she asked gently. Elias did not answer right away. He kept watching the empty darkness on the display, as if patience alone could pull ships out of nothing. "They heard it," he said at last. "Question is, who's close enough to care?" Silence returned. More red light filled the chamber as defense systems powered fully. Outside, the great alien dreadship slowly turned its massive body to face the coming fleet. Cracks in its living hull still glowed from recent damage. It was strong, but not strong enough. Everyone in the room knew it. A sudden sharp sound cut through the air. Not an alarm. Not a weapon. A signal. One of the floating displays flashed bright white. "Unidentified warp emergence," an officer said quickly, surprise breaking his calm. "David!" Extreme distance. Closing fast. Every eye turned to the star map. Far beyond the enemy fleet, space itself twisted slightly, like glass bending under pressure. A small tear of white light opened for a fraction of a second. Something came through. Then the tear vanished, leaving only a single ship drifting in silence. It was unimpressive. Small, uneven shape. Outer paint faded and burned in places. Nothing like the beautiful living vessels of the Queen's people. Confusion moved through the chamber. "That is the help you called?" one officer whispered before he could stop himself. Elias looked at the tiny human ship and smiled softly, the first real smile since the war began. "Yeah," he said. "That's help." Before anyone could respond, space twisted again beside the first ship. Another human vessel appeared. Then another, and another. Different shapes, different sizes, none matching each other. Some looked like cargo carriers with weapons attached, later. Some looked like old warships pulled out of retirement. One looked like a mining rig that had decided to become dangerous. More white tears opened across the dark. Ships poured through them like sparks from a hidden fire. 5, 10, 50. The officers stopped counting aloud. The Queen stepped closer to the display, her calm finally breaking into open wonder. "They come without formation," she whispered. "Without command structure." Elias nodded lightly. "Yeah." "That sounds right." Hundreds of human ships now filled the distant stars behind the enemy fleet. Engines burned in different colors. Radio signals spread wildly in every direction, messy and loud compared to the silent order of alien communication. Voices suddenly burst across open channels inside the chamber. Fast, casual, completely unlike military speech. "Ely, you better still be alive after dragging us out here. Who are the bad guys?" "Wow. That alien ship is huge. Do we get paid for this? Probably not." "Yeah, figured. Let's help anyway." Several alien officers stared in shock at the uncontrolled noise. "They show no discipline," one murmured. Elias chuckled quietly. "They showed up, didn't they?" The Queen felt something new rising inside her chest. Not just hope. Something warmer, Enemy ships began to react at last. Their perfect formation shifted uncertain for the first time. Sensors tried to understand the chaotic human fleet that had appeared from nowhere, because one truth was clear, even without perfect order. There were many of them, far more than expected. The first human message, directed toward the alien dreadship, arrived seconds later, simple and clear. Unknown royal vessel, this is civilian responder group. One of ours asked for help. We are here. Tell us where to point. No titles, no fear, no demand. The Queen looked slowly toward Elias. You command, civilians? She asked softly. He shook his head. No one commands them, he said. They just decide. Outside, the enemy fleet made its choice. If they allowed the human ships to surround them, victory might slip away. So their dark vessels surged forward, engines burning brighter as weapons prepared to fire. The battle began without ceremony. Lines of violent light crossed the black between stars. Explosions bloomed like brief, deadly flowers. Shockwaves rippled through silent space. Inside the command chamber, alien officers moved quickly, guiding their great dreadship into combat beside the unexpected human fleet. Elias watched the battle with steady eyes. Human ships did not fight like trained empires. They moved unpredictably, protected each other without orders, sometimes placed themselves directly between danger and weaker allies. One small cargo ship turned sideways to block a deadly beam aimed at the alien dreadship. Its shields failed instantly, hull breaking apart in silent fire. But the attack it stopped never reached the Queen. More human ships rushed forward without hesitation, not because of duty, because someone needed help. The Queen felt each sacrifice like a physical ache. Among her people, every life was measured, protected, calculated. Humans seemed to measure life differently. They risked everything, quickly, almost casually. Yet their voices on open channels still carried strange humor, even in danger. Okay, that hurt. Still flying. Good enough. Push forward. Tears of light filled the stars as ships on both sides were lost. But slowly, unbelievably, the enemy advance began to slow. Chaos was becoming strength. The Queen turned toward Elias again, her voice quiet with awe. What are your people made of? She asked. He watched the burning battlefield in silence before answering. Nothing special, he said. Just stubborn. A massive explosion suddenly lit the darkness as the enemy flagship took heavy damage from combined fire, alien precision and human unpredictability working together. Cracks of bright energy spread across its surface. For the first time in many years, the hunters felt fear. Minutes later, the flagship broke apart in a silent storm of fading light. Without it, the remaining enemy ships began to retreat. Not in order, not proudly. They fled. The stars grew quiet again, filled only with drifting wreckage and surviving ships trying to understand what had just happened. Inside the chamber, no one spoke for a long time. Victory felt unreal. The Queen finally looked at Elias Ward, the tired mechanic who had arrived alone in a broken salvage tug. You have changed the fate of my people, she said softly. Elias shook his head. Wasn't just me. He looked at the distant human ships, many damaged, some barely holding together, yet still staying close instead of leaving. They just came because someone asked, he said. The Queen followed his gaze, feeling that warm, unfamiliar emotion grow stronger. In that moment, she understood something the galaxy had never truly known. Power did not only come from weapons, or ancient bloodlines, or perfect order. Sometimes power came from something much simpler, the choice to care. And far across the quiet battlefield, human voices were already asking the most ordinary question of all. Everyone okay? The battlefield slowly became quiet again, but it was not the peaceful silence that had existed before the fighting. Broken metal drifted between the stars. Faint light from damaged engines blinked on and off like tired eyes trying to stay open. Small pieces of shattered ships turned slowly in the dark, reflecting distant starlight. Inside the great alien dreadship, no one moved for several long moments. The command chamber was filled with soft breathing, low system sounds, and the weight of everything that had just happened. They were alive. That single truth felt almost impossible. The Queen stood at the center of the glowing room, her tall form still and graceful. But deep emotion moved through her thoughts like waves under calm water. She had seen wars before. She had seen victories. But this felt different. This victory had not been planned by ancient strategy. It had not been won by superior power alone. It had come from a simple call for help and an answer given freely. Her glowing eyes slowly turned toward Elias Ward. He looked even more tired now. His shoulders were slightly bent, and faint dirt still marked his hands from repair work. He did not look like someone who had helped save an entire civilization. He looked like a man who needed sleep and maybe a hot meal. Yet without him, none of this would have happened. "You should be resting," the Queen said gently inside his mind. Elias gave a small shrug. "Rest later," he replied in quiet, simple English. "First make sure nobody's about to explode." Despite the seriousness of the moment, a faint warmth touched her thoughts again. Humans used strange humor in the most serious times. She was beginning to understand that this was not carelessness, it was strength. Around them, officers slowly returned to their duties. Damage reports moved across floating lights. Rescue signals were sent to surviving ships. Paths were opened for medical teams. The long work after battle had begun. Elias watched the glowing displays for a minute, then let out a slow breath. "Looks like you're going to be okay," he said. The Queen studied him carefully. "You speak as if you are leaving soon." He scratched lightly at his beard, thinking. "Well, yeah," he answered. "That was the plan before the whole royal kidnapping and space war situation." Some nearby officers looked uncomfortable again, but the Queen did not react with anger. She had learned that the human's honest words carried no insult, only truth. "You are free to go now," she said softly. "No door will close against you again." The words were simple, yet they carried the weight of ancient law changing. Several officers looked surprised, but none questioned her. Elias nodded slowly, accepting the answer. "Good," he said, "because my ship probably thinks I'm dead." For a brief moment, neither of them spoke. Something unspoken remained between them. Quiet, but strong. Far outside the dreadship, human vessels still filled the nearby stars. Many were damaged. Some were barely holding together, yet none of them had left. They stayed close, sending messages, checking on strangers, offering help without being asked. The Queen watched them through the ship's senses. "They remain," she said, "even though the danger is gone." Elias followed her gaze. "Yeah," he murmured. "They always do that." "Why?" she asked. "There is no reward." He thought about the question for a long second.
"Going home feels easier," he said finally, "when you know everyone else can go home too." The answer settled gently into her thoughts. Simple words, endless meaning. She realized that her people had spent centuries protecting balance through law and duty. Humans protected something else, each other. The chamber lights dimmed slightly as emergency power systems finally relaxed. The long tension of battle was fading. Exhaustion began to touch everyone present. Elias shifted his weight and looked toward the corridor that would lead back to his small salvage ship. "Well," he said quietly, "I should probably—" He stopped speaking, not because of danger, because the Queen had stepped closer. For the first time since they met, the distance between ruler and stranger was gone. She stood only a step away, glowing softly like living starlight,
You changed more than this battle, she said. Elias frowned a little, unsure what she meant. You showed my people a truth we had forgotten, she continued. That strength given freely is stronger than strength taken by force. He did not know how to answer something like that, so he chose the simplest truth again. Where I'm from, he said, helping is normal. For us, she replied, it was not. Silence rested between them, but it felt peaceful now. After a moment, she lifted one glowing hand slightly. Not a command, not a royal gesture, an offer. Walk with me, she said. Elias hesitated only a second before nodding. They left the command chamber together, moved through long silver corridors that now felt different from before. Earlier, the ship had seemed tense and wounded. Now, soft light flowed smoothly along the walls, like slow breathing after pain. Crew members they passed stopped and bowed to their queen. Some also looked at Elias with open curiosity, not fear anymore, respect. They reached a wide observation hall where a transparent living wall revealed open space beyond. Stars shone quietly. Human ships drifted nearby like a protective cloud around the great dreadship. Elias stepped closer to the window. Nice view, he said softly. The queen watched his reflection in the glowing surface. Your people crossed great distance for you, she said.
Not just for me, he answered. For anyone who asked. You believe they would come again?
She asked. He gave a small smile. Yeah, probably complaining the whole way, but they'd come. A gentle silence followed. Then she spoke the words that truly mattered. Our oldest law said a life freely given belongs to the crown. Elias looked at her, waiting. That law is ended, she said. The air itself seemed to pause. In its place, she continued softly, a new law begins. A life freely given will be protected. Always. Elias felt something warm settle quietly in his chest. He had not expected his small choice to change something ancient. Sounds better, he said. She studied his face one more time, as if memorizing it. Will you return to your people now? She asked. He looked out at the human ships again. He could almost imagine the voices waiting for him. Jokes, complaints, relief, home. But then he looked back at the living alien ship, at the civilization standing at the edge of something new, at the queen who had learned to see the universe differently. He took a slow breath. I think, he said quietly, I might stay a little longer, just to make sure nothing else breaks. The answer was simple, but to the queen, it felt brighter than any star. For the first time in many long centuries, she felt something close to peace. Then you will not stay as prisoner, she said gently. Good, he replied. You will stay, she continued, as friend. Elias nodded once. Yeah, he said. I'd like that. Outside the window, human ships slowly began to prepare for departure now that rescue work was ending. One by one, small lights turned away toward distant stars, carrying stories that would spread across the galaxy. Stories not about conquest, not about empires, not about fear. Stories about a single human who stopped to help and a queen who chose to change. Long after the last wreckage faded and the stars returned to quiet, those stories would continue traveling farther than any ship. Because sometimes the smallest kindness could move the entire universe. And in the endless dark between worlds, that light would never truly disappear. Far away, new civilizations would hear the same simple truth. If someone calls for help, humans will come. And this time, the galaxy would be ready to welcome them.